All right, guys, we are live.
Whoop, whoop.
We have this week. We have Mr. Dan Larson from Toy Galaxy. Dan, thank you for being a part of this week. We are all super pumped.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me on.
And then we have Grecofabulous right to my right.
Hello.
And then we have Mr. Ed from Ed's Retro Geek Out over there.
Hi. It's the evening in Belgium, so
yeah,
but it's all good.
Evening, yeah.
Come on, Ed, bring the energy. I don't want to hear about this time difference stuff.
Okay.
It's played out.
I'll drink some more.
All right, guys. So we have a few topics where maybe we'll touch on, but depending on you guys in the audience, your questions and stuff, we're going to start off with topic number one, and that is, what is your creative process when it comes to creating your YouTube videos? And Dan, if you'll start us off and
Absolutely.
how you go through that process.
Well, so let me ask you guys. I'm going to throw right back to you guys just real quick. Just give me a yes or no. You guys you're all single person operations, right? You don't have like a team or a crew or producer Greg or anything like that, right?
Correct.
Right. So our creative process is a little different because we do have two people involved. So most of our videos, in terms of our schedule and where we're going to go and what content we're going to cover, that's actually Greg handling that decision making on the sort of channel management and, trying to balance what we want to cover versus what we think might do well versus what might be trending, just kind of trying to weave a path through all that. At the end of the day, it's really about us, having fun and making sure that our energy can come through on those videos. So there might be something going on where it's like, oh, there's a new Deadpool movie coming out or something. Maybe we should do something with Deadpool, and neither one of us really wants to talk about Deadpool. So we're like, we're just not going to bother doing it. We'll sacrifice the potential views just because we want to do something else and have fun and do our own thing. And that's kind of been our theme since the beginning, is just to try to appeal to a large audience, but also just remember that, at the end of the day, we're trying to entertain each other, entertain ourselves, and have fun with it. So, usually Greg will set the schedule and determine what we're going to cover from week to week, month to month. And then when you bring it down to the actual weekly production schedule, it gets kicked back to me. I then take that topic, do research. He'll do some research. I'll do some research. And then write the actual script. Most of the gags I'm putting in the script, I'm coming up with in the hopes that I'm going to be able to make Greg laugh, when we go through the read through or when we get on set. I'm working out the timing and all that sorts of things, leaving space for him to do some stuff as well. And then we shoot the video. That's the shortest part of the process. Just honestly, most videos we shoot just a little bit more than what you actually see. Especially once we started keeping in bloopers and outtakes and stuff like that. There's very little that doesn't go into the actual finished video. And then Greg takes it from there. He spends, day, 2 days, 3 days, sometimes depending on how complex that edit is. And then it's it, and we move on to the next one. That's it for us.
Very good. So we do have a quick question, Dan, from Cincy Nerd, and he says, is your producer interested in producing any other YouTube channels?
Oh, he's trying to leech him away.
Right? I see what he's doing.
I'll say that everybody's available for a price.
Fair enough.
If you wanted to throw a sack of cash at him, I don't think he'd say no. But in terms of Toy Galaxy Productions, we'd love to be able to reach out beyond and do other stuff outside of toys. It's just hard because that's where my real passion is. That's where my vast amount of trivial knowledge is focused. If we were going to do like a movie channel or something, I'd really have to watch more movies and pay attention and, think of ways to break those things down. And it's, it would be tough to make that step outside of toys for us, but we would both like to at some point.
Well, I do like that you mentioned. Well, sorry, Ed. I was going to say I do like that you mentioned that. Ed, shut up. The adults are talking. I do like that you mentioned that you do forego, like you said, the potential hot topic if it's not something you're necessarily passionate about, like how you alluded to, like a Deadpool type of show. I think that's important because although all of us here do love the attention and the audience that we could potentially bring in. I think it definitely comes through if you're not genuine about what the topics you're speaking on. And, it's only gonna be a matter of time before people kind of see that in the end product that you're kind of chasing.
It slow you down as well in terms of your own production and your ability to get that video done week to week. I can't relate to what you guys might use as motivation to keep yourself going. If there's a week where you don't feel like doing it and you need to get a video out there to keep your channel growth going, to keep your audience engaged, for me, it's Greg makes me do it.
There's the puppets again.
Snuffleupagus.
So
We're gonna get flagged for copyright infringement.
So it's both you and Greg doing actual filming, making B-roll, doing close-up shots and stuff like that, but who is like the project manager in this thing? Because you co-write the script, and Greg does the content planning as well. Or
yeah, it depends on where you would draw the line in terms of script is concerned, because that finished product has a lot in it that's not in the script. Any of those, screen hits, any of the, fart sound effects, explosions, any of those sort of creative decorations and those kinds of things, just the pacing of the whole episode, that's all on Greg's end. I don't really have any input on that. I don't see that until the day the video is done, which is usually the day the video is getting posted. And my first watch through of a video is basically, it's already rendered, it's on YouTube, it's scheduled to go live, and my first view of it is basically just to say, oh no, this is the wrong picture, or you spelled a name wrong unintentionally, or something like just a little catch, and then we'll have is it worth just letting it go through? Does it look like we did it on purpose as a gag? Can we let that slide through, or is this going to legitimately cause a problem? And even at that stuff occasionally still gets through, and we just have to live with it. But in terms of like project management, that is mostly that's Greg. I'm really just in the trench, write that script, the structure, the framework of that video, and then the on-screen performance.
So am I hearing that as long as Greg is there, Toy Galaxy can live on and you're pretty much interchangeable?
Exactly, yeah. It's honestly, we designed it as a 50-50 thing, and it's always been 50-50 from day one, and it would be a completely different show if you took me out. It'd be a completely different show if you took Greg out. There's so much in terms of the tone and the voice and the character of the channel that is uniquely him. And as people who edit your own videos, how much that you change the feel of that video, and your personality goes into that based on how you edit it and where you decide to put those different little bits of your character in.
Definitely. Greco, what's kind of like your process as far as what you do? Because we're all different. I mean, we're kind of similar, but I mean, a little difference.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's. I wish I had like a same recipe that I could follow for every video. I would love to have that kind of template. But yeah, being that I am kind of like a one-man shop, and that I do different types of videos in terms, like, I'm all over the place, right? I'll do like live, hunting videos. I'll do just regular other types of shopping, whether it's retail or online, where you don't necessarily have that like ride-along camera to tell the story for you. And then I'll mix in some other things. It's really driven by like what's motivating me in that moment. And honestly, like, since I don't have like necessarily like a Greg on my side to kind of like where we can bounce ideas off each other or keep each other like on a path necessarily, like I'm a little all over the place. So like if I do like a live hunting video, what I'll start with is, obviously I've already gone out, collected the kind of like, footage of my GoPro. I'll kind of review that, lay it out. And then as I'm watching it, I'll, write down ideas as far as like, oh, here's something I saw in the video that maybe I totally missed, or like, oh, here's an opportunity for like a joke or something. Cause like, I'll not only show the actual like buying and negotiation process, but I'll try to inject some kind of humor in there. And that's something that I've always struggled with, because anytime you try to like label yourself as like a funny man, you're like really, especially like to the internet, it's a very like vulnerable position to be in, because I'm sure as many people that I can like muster up a chuckle from, there's probably like the same amount of people that just like hate me and wish I would just shut up and just talk toys. And I've definitely received those comments from time to time. So if you're gonna do that, definitely just be aware. Just make sure you have thick enough skin to kind of have that roll off you. And then with other types of videos, again, I try to. When I first started watching other people in this arena, it was a lot of a show and tell, and for me, it got kind of dry. Especially like when I started off comic books, everybody was buying the same books every week because they weren't getting anything new. As far as like what the new releases were, everybody was getting the same stuff. So I didn't want to be that because I got kind of bored of it. So that's why vintage lends itself to, you never know what you're going to find out there. It's not the same stuff and the stories behind it. But also when you don't have the kind of live footage to tell that story, that's when I try to interject like skits into there where I can show myself, like playing with a toy or just having some fun with it. Just because that's what I want to see and that's what I'm entertained by. Again, it's not always a home run, but at least as far as like the creative process, it makes things much more enjoyable. And then there's times where it's just like, to heck with it all. Like, sometimes the effort doesn't necessarily match the, what you get back in terms of reaction. So let's just turn on the camera and spitball for like an hour, and then I'll make, magic out of it in the editing. So, again, yeah, I wish I had more of a streamlined process because it might help me get on a more consistent like cadence with my release schedule and an end product that I can be happy with every time. But sometimes you just gotta just roll with whatever motivates you in that moment, and hopefully you'll come out with something you're happy with in the end.
Awesome. Ed, what's your thoughts, man?
My creative process is I think the first 2 years, because I've been doing this for 2.5 years now, is probably just me learning how to make a video or what a video can consist of, editing wise, because it's always been a passion of mine to really create something that kind of resembles like a decent edited video. And I think like lately, with the help of my buddies who have been supporting me from day one in the channel, Matthias and Renzo, they've been coming along to the Behind the Collector videos that I've been doing pretty well, helping out with, like making sure we get B-roll of everything that we talk about when we're over at that collector. They're doing the camera work. They're helping me out with the lights and stuff. Not that they really know how to do it, but we're doing it DIY-ish. I'm a punk rocker, so I mean DIY all the way. Why not?
Yeah.
For me, that has been so much fun, especially doing it from mainland Europe, trying to do like an American YouTube show.
Right.
So my creative process in that as well has changed. Before I was just popping the camera on and going like that. Then I learned how to really, I think, edit, or really learn how you can like eliminate a lot of stuff, like words you say out a lot, like yeah and like stuff like that. I'm doing it again. That doesn't really bring too much substance to what you're explaining or to the viewer, and you can just cut those things out. But it's a learning process. It's a learning curve for me. I'm still learning all that stuff. And now I feel like I've really made myself do this content planning as well, doing 2 videos a week, which, narrows down what you could potentially do, but it also makes you think like, but I want to do it better. How can I do this efficiently and not be working on a video for 2 months and then, premiering it or popping it out on YouTube and being like, okay, did I really spend 2 months on this thing? Because
So Ed, you made a conscious decision to make your videos in English to speak to an English to speaking audience. Yes.
Yeah.
And what was your thought process there? Just the larger audience.
I guess like everything comes down to music in my life. And when I started doing music, we started singing in English because all the bands we were into did that. YouTube was the same thing. I was into AVGN. I was into Game Chasers. They did it in English. So I was like, well, I mean, my English accent isn't too bad, so I might as well just do that,
Because you spent your summers in like Canada, right? Correct?
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, and your videos for the past 2 months, like during this whole pandemic, like, dude, you've grown so much in your editing, all the research you've been putting in. I mean, you can definitely tell, like, you've been killing it. So just had to say that.
I had found like a a place where I was comfortable with doing live hunting videos and like actually stepping away from that reality vibe of me working with the green screens and stuff. Just, you know, like it seemed like people were actually responding more to me just being there and then showing the pickups, but still doing it in an edited way and explaining, you know, how I found it, why this is important, or something like that. So, and then like the whole pandemic started, and I was like, how am I gonna fill content with this? Because the other stuff, it's a lot of work. You know, like the video I popped out today, it's 2 days later than I wish I had popped it on, but that was like 3 weeks of just, you know, writing a script as well. I didn't know how to write a script. I started off with doing, you know, a structure, and then, well, this, I really need to know what I'm saying there, because otherwise it's just going to be gibberish, and I can't even edit that when I just go on a rampage word wise, you know? So
that's how we started. I thought for sure, like, oh, I know toys, I know all the stuff about this. Turn the camera on, let me just start talking. And we did that for about 3 minutes, and I was like, this is terrible. Nobody's going to watch this. I have to write a script. I need to know exactly what I'm going to say. We have to plan all this out to the letter, and we'll come back to it. Now, you know, 5 years later, I think I could probably do it without a script now and be comfortable and be, you know, not have all those filler words and have a purpose to my speech. But it's tough. It's two totally different things.
How did on that note, how did the live show play out? Was that scripted to an extent? Like, I mean, obviously you have a whole audience around you. How did that?
We treated it just like we would treat a regular episode, so it was fully scripted. You know, there's a couple of ad libs in there because I knew the energy was going to be totally different. You can't. It's unfortunate you can't see it in that video, but there's probably about 35 or 40 people in that room. There's only about 10, 12 behind me. So it was very strange to be looking at an audience behind the camera, where usually it's just Greg standing there.
Do you go as far as having like a teleprompter, or do you just?
Yep. We set goals each year that we had the channel. We sort of set some goals for ourselves, things that we wanted to improve, add to the channel, change whatever. After that first year, we spent the first year of the channel because it's a scripted show, and there's no way I was going to memorize a script. We knew we were going to need some way for me to be able to see the words and to be able to do that performance. And literally what we did was we had the camera on the tripod, and then right below the lens, there was like a metal plate, and we had a magnet, and I would print out each paragraph of the script, and Greg would switch out the paragraph of the script each time. We had it printed in 35, 38 point type. It was huge, so I could read it from about 6, 8, 10 feet away. And he would so we would go through toner and paper, and it was just a labor intensive process. So after that second year, we were like, we're buying a teleprompter. So, we spent $100 or I don't even know how much it was. Greg bought it. And we bought a really basic teleprompter. We've got like a little, Kindle or tablet or something, and that, reflects off the screen. And that's what we use. We've been using that since. We got better lights. We use a teleprompter. I wear makeup. If you go back in the older videos, my eyes look dead. They're all shadowy. And we're like, I need to start wearing makeup. If we're going to, act like a professional show, we need to look like a professional show,
Yeah, people used to call you Dead Dan Larson. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I know. Yeah. We're slowly going back and redoing a lot of those videos and taking
Yeah, I guess as far as that topic is concerned for myself, I mean, since I do toy hunting, I kind of wing it sometimes. I mean, because you never know what you're going to find. If I'm hunting for vintage, it's always, you never know. When I do my retail hunts, I kind of have a list, and it's kind of I do recaps like, hey, I'm searching for the real Ghostbusters, Hasbro stuff, and I kind of keep that going. So for me, it's different. I don't spend near as much time as you guys in editing, so it's a lot different for myself.
And yeah, you're everything on your phone, right?
And I do everything on my phone. It's crazy.
And in spite of that, you're like the second most popular person on this panel right now.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Which is very frustrating. I will have to admit, but it's fine. To each their own.
Hey, we had some of that in our channel production as well, as far as like trying to make the process as simple as possible. We don't spend nearly as much time on our videos as it might look like we do, because we knew that we get bored after a while, and the easier we made it to make a video, to produce a finished product, the more likely we were to get it done every week. So, you know, keeping that process as simple as possible, especially if that works for you, with less investment in your camera, less time, you know, with footage and editing and all that stuff. And if you can craft it in such a way that it gives you your unique personality in your videos, that's awesome.
Yeah. How long do you guys spend on your videos, or like an average video?
Yeah, it varies. Usually I have a full day of writing, which a full day, I would say, you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. I try to stretch that over a couple of days so that you can sort of get your ideas down at first and then pull back, because a lot of the time, especially with like the history videos, it's just a lot of facts and dates and numbers and stuff. And that doesn't necessarily lend itself immediately to jokes and humor and stuff. So it's easier if I can sort of put that script out there and then let it sort of, you know, simmer for a while, come back to it after a day or two and say, like, you know, oh, I had an idea for a gag here, idea for a gag here, and then start to work those in, restructure that narrative if I need to make it have a little bit more, you know, progression through the whole thing, instead of just being like, here's a regurgitated Wikipedia page in my voice, you know?
Nice. All right, we had some questions. Dan, what is your day job? You have a very natural screen presence, so I was wondering if you work professionally in film or media, from Cincy Nerd.
Not really. I've been in sales forever. So, you know, if you've done any kind of sales before, you're constantly in a sort of character, if you will. You know, you're trying to have that high energy, to know your material, to get that sort of read from a customer, whoever you're talking to. And, you know, I spent a long time as a dealer, as a toy dealer, you know, buying auctions, you know, going to flea markets, going to auctions and that type of stuff. And that, you know, really, that was a sort of lead up to doing Toy Galaxy, because I had all that, you know, really hyper specific trivial knowledge of all the little different variants and guns and colors and, you know, mold variations and that stuff. But then also just being able to talk to people and have that sort of shared energy of like being a collector and going and finding stuff. And what are you interested? What am I interested? Who's got stuff? And just, you know, it really lent itself to that whole community. So while I haven't necessarily done any sort of professional acting or performance or anything like that, there's a lot of what I've done just, you know, through the course of different jobs that have aspects of that to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Selling it.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
How did you and producer Greg there find each other, I guess? What's the
We
story?
used to work together. We were both working at the same retail place 20 years ago, and had obviously similar interests. And he, you know, ultimately we just, you know, we were friends, and he's a big movie guy. So, you know, at a certain point, I wanted to get in front of a camera and do on-camera stuff. He wanted to be behind a camera doing behind-camera stuff. So that lent itself very well to some kind of working relationship. So, you know, we used to shoot like little indie films and, you know, stuff like that before we settled on, let's try a YouTube channel and see what we can do with that.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So Toy Chase, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on the new G.I. Joes? Greco, are you going to pick up any of these?
I didn't pick up any of the old ones, so I'm not going to pick up any of the new ones. Unless there's resale value in there, then I'm all over it.
Ed,
These are like the cool looking ones, like
Hasbro,
Snake Face.
Snake Eyes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, snake face. What am I saying? Snake Eyes. Yeah, I like G.I. Joe. For me, is more of like the 90s lines that I'm into with the bright blue colors. It's gonna take a while before they get the those, and I'll really be like, oh my god, this is what I want.
Yeah.
So for now, I'm gonna be holding off because there's only that much new retail stuff I can buy, honestly.
Sure. Dan.
Yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in on G.I. Joe. Wherever they want to go with it, I'm there. I mean, as a kid, you know, the 80s line, you know, Real American Hero, that was, you know, one of my core collection components. So all of that is right 100% in my wheelhouse. I already have all of the vintage figures that I could want in excellent condition, complete with all their weapons and their pets and stands, and they're all in vintage cases and that stuff. So that hunt has ended for me. There's nowhere else I can go except for collecting characters that I don't necessarily want. I'm not a completist. I don't need to have every single one in that line. Plus, there's just so many of them. But that vintage collection is complete. I have all the like 25th, 30th anniversary ones that I want. So it's like,
nice.
New is the only place left for me to go.
Yeah, and I think for myself, I want to get Destro, Snake Eyes, Duke, maybe Roadblock for now, from what I've seen.
Okay, so you're only 90% in.
Yeah, maybe a little 10% off there, but yeah, they look great. I did not get the what was that, the exclusive that came out in April? They sent out.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you get that one, Dan?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. As soon as they put that up, I got that one. It's real nice. It's just it's a paint variant. Comes with different weapons.
Yeah. Cool.
I will say though that I did just pick up the vintage guide here. That I know it's been out for a while. So if you ask me a similar question in a few more weeks, I might be able to fake it a little better.
Mine's on the bookshelf behind me somewhere.
I got that one too, man. The Mark Bellamo stuff is freaking awesome.
All right, so question from Viper. Dan, what are your thoughts over the coming months, and whether there will be any possibility of any toy conferences going ahead?
Yeah, I think we'll get back to it. We'll get back to it eventually, but I wouldn't expect anything to happen over 2020. I would be very surprised. Obviously, all the big conventions have already canceled. I wouldn't be surprised if little local stuff goes forward, depending on how it's handled, in that locality. If people are smart and careful, but I wouldn't expect anything for the rest of 2020. I'm confident we'll get back to it. People just need to feel confident that the right precautions are being taken place, and their safety and everybody else's safety is, a concern. And then that goes for everything else, sporting events and concerts and whatever else. It's going to take a little time to get back there.
Yeah, I think 2020 is a wash, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it wiped out Harry's Toy Show in Franklin, Massachusetts, I mean, nothing's coming back.
Yeah. No, that's everybody.
Everyone falls in line behind Harry.
Comic-Con did the same thing. San Diego, they called Harry. What are you doing? We're canceling.
We're done. All right, Dan. Exactly how many Boba Fetts are in your army?
Or do you not want to spoil it?
No, it's fine. I can't say. So we did announce that there are. I hit 500. We did show that on Instagram and other social media stuff. We're working on the video now, so there are a few more than 500 currently. But I didn't really want to go forward with those numbers publicly until we actually put out that 500 video, because I'm afraid that too many people might send them in, or I might start finding more. And I'm like, before I know it, it's like, oh, we're at 600. So
right,
not even bother with a 500 video now, just make it 600. So I'm like, I'm intentionally not posting any of those after 500 to force myself to focus on getting that 500 video done.
It might be a weird question, but have you ever seen that video by Red Letter Media of, I think it's called like Pathetic Man-Child Destroys...
Yes, I didn't watch it. You're talking about the one where he melts all the figures?
Yeah.
I didn't watch it because I refused to give him a click for that. It's just feel whatever you want about collecting and the Star Wars franchise and whatever else. But to me, it seemed unnecessary. And
but was it real? Because I mean, he's claiming it's like vintage stuff. It's like, what?
I know it was 100% legit. And sparked exactly the kind of outrage and disgust from people like us who collect that stuff and care about it and want to see that stuff last. It wasn't for me. I didn't watch it.
Okay.
But I know what's in it, and it's just there's probably better outlets for that. If you're so angry about where the franchise is now, I don't know why you take it out on the part of the franchise that you loved.
Yeah,
indeed.
Sure. Yeah, I think like Cincy. Like it was way down in the comments before. He was also asking, is one of those Boba Fett's that you own one of the prototypes with the J or the the L
No.
rocket firing thing.
Those are so rare. In fact, as far as I know, there's only like 14 or 15, maybe 20, 25. Like when you think about the actual production process for action figures, there's those sort of stages where it's like, they're just testing the molds to see if they work, and that's where those like multicolored one shots come from, where it's got like a yellow arm and a green leg and whatever. It's literally like whatever plastic they had laying around, they just pumped it through the molds and put this thing together and send it out and say, look, are the joints tight enough? Does everything fit together okay? Do these molds need to be fixed? So there's some of those. And when they get to Kenner or Hasbro or wherever, nobody's looking at that thing and being like, be careful, this is worth millions of dollars. It's just like, okay, this is the scrap thing that's going to turn into the thing we're trying to make, so put it in the trash. So there's not that many of those. And then as that process goes through, you get to the more finished pieces, and there's that J slot and the L slot where they're trying to figure out, is that mechanism actually going to work? Is it going to break? Is it a hazard? And again, they only, the factories would only send like 5 or 10 of those things, and they test it out, and 4 of them break, and they put them in the trash. So like they're very, very, very rare pieces. As far as I know, to my knowledge, none of them got shipped out in the mail. None of them made it to retail shelves. They were literally in Kenner employees' desks. So there's only, like I said, maybe 15 or 20. It does seem like a new one pops up every once in a while, and I always question, I'm like, how is there another one? But no, there's none of mine are rocket fire. I wish. I would sell it in a second, I'll be honest with you. If I get my hands on it, it's gone.
So Space Case asks, besides action figures, do you collect anything else? Dan, what about you?
I do collect other stuff. I collect vintage cap guns. I'm not really a gun person. I don't own any actual firing guns or anything. But the idea of cap guns has always fascinated me, especially the further back you go. In the 50s and 60s when Westerns were really, really big, and that's all I wasn't born yet. I don't know how old everybody thinks I am. I'm not that old. But that whole era, the kinds of toy guns that they were making could double as, like, if you saw these guns, you'd think they were real guns. They're the same exact size. They're gorgeously manufactured. They have, 2-piece firing caps that you put them in. Smoke comes out the barrel. Like, the degree they went to make these things feel and look real, it wouldn't happen today. So to me, it's this sort of curiosity. It's almost like this archaeological curiosity that these things exist. When I was a kid in the 80s, you still had like Rambo guns and Uzis and AK-47s on the rack. And then we went through that whole Entertech phase where they needed to start putting the orange tips on the guns. And so more and more guns just weren't toys anymore. Like there used to be a gun aisle in the toy store.
I was going to jump on that if you weren't going to mention it. That's one of the memories.
At least in the U.S. I can't speak to any other country, obviously. But in the U.S., there were gun racks and buckets full of toy guns. And then, it's not a thing anymore. You still have the Nerf, the dart guns and those sorts of things. But, to me, when I see those things pop up at auctions or flea markets or whatever, it is just a fascinating thing to me that I can't leave them there. Like, I have to, especially if it's something I haven't owned before. So I do collect cap guns. What else do I collect? I still have a very large comic book collection. I'm not actively reading the way I used to. All that money goes to toys now since we started the channel. But those are my big ones, toys and cap guns.
Dude, the cap guns, have they always had the red plastic stuff with the tiny gunpowder in it? Or was it before tiny paper with
so there's different kinds. So there's the 6 or 8 shot, the circular ones that are plastic and they have the little white powder in them. Then there are the paper roll ones. But then if you go back even further, they look like actual bullets. There's a little 2-piece, it looks like a shell that you can put in a gun, and the cap goes in there, and you close it, and then you load 6 caps into your Western 6-shooter. And it looks like a real gun with 6 bullets in it. And all that stuff, it's extremely rare now. And eBay won't let you sell those kinds of guns especially if they don't have an orange tip, permanently affixed to it. So the only way to find that stuff is really at auctions or in-person sales or forums where it's specifically dedicated.
Are you like addicted to the smell of like an expired like a cap gun ammo, or that little?
I wouldn't say no, but
it's catch a whiff.
There's definitely a nostalgic factor because there was absolutely a time as a kid, I wasn't the kind of kid who got to play with fireworks. Where I grew up, they were, mostly illegal. You couldn't really own them or shoot them off like in your backyard or anything. So I definitely spent some summers, playing with caps and lighting caps on fire and, taking that magnifying glass and burning the cap and, waiting for it to like light on fire and you get that smell. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm addicted to the smell, but it absolutely brings back some memories.
I was a little worried you were going to say you were burning ants when you pulled up the magnifying glass.
No. Fortunately, I melted some action figures. I can say that from experience that Secret Wars figures burn real clean. That's a clean burning action figure.
That's a good one.
I used to have like from Disneyland one of those musket guns, and they would have like one lever you'd pull. You could put one cap in, and that was it. But they looked pretty cool. It was like Pirates of the Caribbean. Yep. That was like the stand where you would get those at.
Yeah, I have one of those. Yep.
There we go.
Totally.
But yeah, like just to weigh in on that question. I know it's the Dan show, but I thought we could all kind of answer people's questions. Same thing with me. I mean, I obviously toys is my number one, but I do dabble in some other things. But like Dan said with him, I'm not really like chasing them per se. Like if it were to like fall into my lap and it's something that I wanted to hang on to, that would be the extent of my collecting. But like you can see it in my wall decorated with it. I have some like vintage arcade headers, like a Burger King, Burger Time. you guys remember that Burger King arcade game from the 80s? No. Pac-Man, and then I have some artwork that's kind of framed up there. That's from various comic book things that I've been into, and again I have comics in storage and things like that. So and video games too. So I mean that whole kind of like the mainstream pop culture stuff that most people are chasing after. I have some interest in it. If but there's limits. It's not like as vast as some of the toy lines that I'm after.
Yeah, you got to go.
Mr. Ed.
I collect like Man magazines as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a collection of guitars. I've been really into like getting like all of the weird Gibson models. So that's something I also look for on secondhand websites and stuff like that. I think like 80% of all my guitars are secondhand, and they're like way older ones. Like most of them are older than me actually. So that's really cool. And it's just toys. I also have like 3,000 video games retro.
Yeah.
So
you have
that's the other part of the room. Yeah. How about you, Craig?
Games as well, of course. So in front of me is a lot of NES games, but also I think I'm going to start collecting vintage beer neon lights. I don't know why, but when I go into these flea markets and secondhand shops, they just draw my attention, and I'm just like, oh, that's beautiful. I love that. So I think I'm going to start picking up some of those. I don't know where I'm going to put them, but something about them.
It could be related to your alcoholism.
Could be. Yeah. But yeah, so those lights they look pretty sick. All right. And then Toy Chase also, what is your favorite action figure for each of you? So Greco.
I was going mid-drink, so you would avoid calling on me.
Yeah, I beat you to it.
Let's circle back. Give me a second. I gotta look around the room here.
Yeah, mine is Storage Shell Raphael.
Storage Shell? Why is that? Just brings back memories as a kid? It
looks so freaking cool. I mean, is literally the most awesome sculpt ever. And I guess like this is one
in the chronology of you getting toys, when you were a kid, like is that one of the earliest, or was that sort of like you knew you liked toys and then that thing came out?
I remember Turtles from like when I started remembering stuff. So I must have had Turtles from when I was like 2 years old, and I remember getting Raphael over in Mallorca, which is like an island off the coast of Spain. And yeah, there was like turtle ice cream back then and stuff. It's just like everything was turtles. And you know, when you're like a 3 or 2-year-old, like you're awake for what, like 6 hours a day. So everything was turtles back then. It was the best time in the world, obviously. So yeah, I don't know. Every time I look at that figure, it's like, yeah, nice, awesome, and
It brings you back.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That's my favorite.
Greco, are we good? You good to talk?
Yeah, I mean, I grabbed something. I don't know if it's like my all-time favorite in the world. Unfortunately, like I have a pretty shoddy memory from childhood, so I would love to like wax poetic about, every single thing that I got as a kid growing up. But since the synapses aren't there anymore, one thing that I have fond memories of because I love the movie growing up. I didn't own this toy as a child, but it relates to what I'm doing now because this is my first like vintage flea market find. And I was like super excited because I picked it up on my birthday. That's what I wanted to do on my birthday, by the way, is go flea market hunting alone. So it just worked out where I got a complete inbox Ed 260, the Kenner one. It's obviously, Ed 209 from the movies. So I was super excited to get it because I love RoboCop. Did not have this as a kid. And I think it was like my first experience with like haggling too. And this is all documented. It's in one of my very early flea market hunting videos. And I think I got it for like complete in box for like $10,
nice.
Which was like awesome.
Indeed.
It's insane.
Yeah,
awesome.
And it does have a cap gun feature too. I think I use the paper strips. So I'm just gonna take a smell here. Just like gasoline and cap guns right there.
I think for myself, mine would be Scareglow, but a close second would be Mr. Randy Travis. So,
all right,
yeah,
until Carl Winslow pops up.
Until Carl Winslow, I get one of those action figures. Yeah. I gotta make.
So, is yours Boba Fett, Dan, or is it maybe something different?
Yeah, it really is. That original Kenner figure is just, it's just like you said, nothing's better in the rest of your life than when you were 10 because everything is new and awesome. And, as a kid, those are the kinds of things you fall in love with. And, as far as the action figures I still have, the physical pieces I still have from when I was a kid, I still have that one. I have a couple others, but that's the one that I really, made sure I always knew where it was, and it was always in a particular place. We moved a lot. My dad was in the military, so we moved a lot as a kid, and that was one of the few pieces that actually survived and made it all the way through. And just it's such a weird figure, like it doesn't match the character on screen. That jetpack with the missile and whatever else. There's so much about it that is just wrong that it never really was that character to me. For whatever Boba Fett is in Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, that figure was never that guy because it doesn't even look like him, So
did you try getting him as a mail away, or like is the holiday special the first time you saw him, or where did you first meet him?
So I was born in 76. Star Wars came out in 77, so I wouldn't have really seen it. Like my parents, when I look back at photo albums and stuff, my parents had some of the action figures. They got them for my brother and I, but I was like, one, what am I going to do with them? So by the time Empire comes out, that's when I'm starting to really, go see movies and understand things. And that's obviously when Boba Fett comes out. So, it was just one of the action figures that, trip to the store, got a figure, but then there's a connection, and that just, it was always one of the ones I went for, always one of the ones that I had with me. I think about now, like some places that I took it and I'm like, I can't believe it came back from the beach. I can't believe it came back from my friend's house, a sleepover. I can't believe it survived that trip on the kite, up into the sky or whatever. He showed that wear, his armor is just wrecked. He can't stand up, but that thing just became this sort of, symbol of, action figures and collecting and Star Wars and space and just all of that stuff. I barely even think of it as Boba Fett, but I got to call it that because that's what everybody knows it is.
That's awesome. Dan, do you enjoy the Mandalorian?
I think it's great. Yeah, I actually just finished. We've been watching. They've been doing a behind the scenes sort of series on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I saw that.
Third episode came out this week. I've been enjoying that as well. Just as sort of like a a peek behind the scenes in terms of the production, because the production is so unique on that, how they're shooting it, the big screens, the 4K screens that they have sort of in the background instead of just straight up, blue or green screen stuff. The production is interesting, but then just, it's, my favorite recent Star Wars. I loved Force Awakens. I loved Last Jedi, but I really love Rebels. Rebels really hit me, and Mandalorian is right there as well too.
Yeah, so well written. Great show. So we have a question from Big Colorful Toy Show. Do you guys think that these old classic 80s franchises like Motu, Thundercats, or Brave Star will ever have a real renaissance like Marvel Comics or with the MCU or Transformers? What do you guys think? Greco.
Well, I mean, I feel bad for Thundercats because I feel like they've tried so many times and it's just not happening.
Yeah, they have a show on right now on Cartoon Network.
Is that still going? I just assumed it would have been canceled by
No,
now.
I think it's still going. I tried to watch a few episodes just to see if I could do it, but I couldn't get into it.
And I mean, I feel like if anyone had the chance, it may be Motu, but again, I feel like they've also had some, kind of trials at Resurgence. That's who I would like to eventually succeed, but I don't know. At some point they're just people are gonna stop trying, right? I don't know.
I think if this new Kevin Smith fronted series doesn't hit, then I think you got to just bury it. Sorry, Pixel Dan.
He's like, oh. I mean, there's a lot to look forward to with Motu this next year and a half, 2 years. So we'll see what happens with that, because I think there's a second show on Netflix coming on as well, and then you got the comic book going on, and then the origin line and all that. So I hope that it takes off. Ed, what do you think?
That's the tough thing. Like, I think Transformers and Star Wars have really been the only ones that I can think of off the top of my head to really be able to balance that. Maybe Ninja Turtles, to be able to balance that. How do we simultaneously take care of the people who grew up with it and made it into the success that it was, but then also engage a new audience? Marvel's been trying to do the same thing with Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man used to be a photographer for the Daily Bugle. Then he was like a web designer, pun intended. They've been trying to, like, he's got to graduate from high school. He's got to get to college. Like, you can't believe that this dude's a high school, senior for, 40, 50 years. Like, how do you balance that? Like, make it new, make it relevant, but also make it the thing that it was 40 years ago.
Sure. Ed, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's not so obvious to kind of compare the two, because Marvel had, the whole universe already going in the comics, and the comics already went on for 30 years, creating, more than 30 years, 40 years probably, or 50 years, whatever, creating like generations of fans each time. And basically the toy lines we're referring to now have had like a good run of 3 years, maybe 8 years of actual people being into that. It's crazy that the Transformer movies did so well, but I think it's because the movies were just, really impressive to go and watch for newcomers and people that, kind of knew the toys from back in the day were like, okay, this is cool, it's Transformers. It's crazy that they did, what is it now, 5 movies already?
5 or 6, yeah.
Transformers? If you count Bumblebee, right? Yeah.
Bumblebee was
Bumblebee. Yeah, 6 then. So yeah, I think it's going to be weird to compare, because also they can't like feed off of each other. I know they try doing like the Hasbro Cinematic Universe or something like that, but like they didn't have that connection back in the day. So it's kind of weird to force that. But it would be cool. It would definitely be cool to see just like a decently done He-Man movie for once.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
like,
the thing.
Don't like, for me, it's like, don't start with a series, because nobody. I mean, I'm not saying nobody watches that, but you need like that one new spark to generate a series. I think, instead of starting from a series and then going to a movie.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's just me. That's my opinion. I don't know. You know?
we don't bring you on here for your opinions, Ed. We want facts.
I think
Um,
they just should have kept going with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the second movie on. Just kept that going like James Bond. That would have been fine by me.
Yeah.
But I think like with Matty Collector, like the whole freaking Modu Classics line, it's insane like how long it's been going on for 10 years and longer. So there's the audience out there for it, but they just need like you said, Dan, the good product to have the vintage fans connect to it, but also reach new audiences with it.
Right.
And yeah, so I think Transformers and Star Wars have both done that, where they've straddled that line and said, you know what, we're literally just going to release 2 different series of toys. This is the stuff that's going to appeal to the G1, the old timers, and this is the stuff that's going to be new and innovative. And if the older collectors pick up that stuff and say, oh, we like that, then they can cycle those things in when they do the next line of G1 redos,
Yeah. Indeed.
Well, and I also feel like it's really hard. It ultimately comes down to like how you define success. Like obviously the companies, they're looking at the fiscal kind of success. Like that's why we're getting all those kind of like big Bay movies for Transformers, because people kept showing up to the theater, and I'm not like a G1 purist in that I won't like accept any kind of like reimagining or anything like that. Like when I went to go see the first live action in the movie, pretty sure I cried at some point, just like seeing these things like come to life. The first time like I think like Blackout like transformed on screen and like took out that whole like military base. Like that's what I've been waiting my whole life to see, like a real living Transformer, because and the CGI and everything was like amazing at the time. Now looking back on it, like rewatching it, like story wise, it's a little cringy, the humor, and you kind of, when you lose that initial wow factor, it's not the greatest movie. And then I kind of lost interest like halfway through the second one. Once like I was all pumped for Devastator, like I love Combiners, and they kind of just like, instead of focusing on him as like the bad guy, he was just kind of like a throwaway guy. And they made that bad like scrotum joke, and like they like, and I always hate when the humans can just like come up with this like a secret weapon that just like destroys it like out of nowhere. It's just like, I feel like humans should have no shot against a Transformer.
Yeah.
So not to mention a Combiner. So I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, as a fan, it's a double-edged sword depending on what you like. You want these franchises to have success, but you just hope that the people behind it can kind of do it justice.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, it's all personal preference. Like I'm sure people love all of the Transformers movies for what they are. That's their first exposure to them for some people. And like again, I'm all about injecting new blood, and because that's how it keeps these things that we love from our childhood going. So
for sure. All right, Cincy Nerd, question for the group: who or what would win in a dogfight, Slave One or the Razor Crest? So the Razor Crest is the aircraft that the Mandalorian flies. So, Dan, what do you think?
I think Gary's still out on that. We don't really know the full functionality of Razor Crest yet.
True. Greco Ed,
you have to pay that one for now.
I'm just gonna remove myself from this conversation.
He used it.
Totally worth it.
I think Slave One. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously you can't go too hard with having the child on your dashboard.
I mean, yeah.
Although he's got, like the Force and stuff going on. I mean, he can probably make that stuff work. If anything, he could probably make the Razor Crest go even faster. Or does that not work in that kind of magic in Star Wars world?
I don't know his full potential.
It's true.
So depends what the plot calls for.
Ed, do you actually watch The Mandalorian? Not to put you on the spot since you just gave an answer, but
I sit right across from the people in IT, and they're madly into it. So I have watched like 3 episodes, and I keep up to date on how cute Baby Yoda is. But I still have to kind of like finish the series But
yeah, you need
cool.
to be fluent in current memes, so you need to know what's going on with Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think like it would have been as successful if they didn't have Baby Yoda? Meme wise, top of mind, it was trending above, people running for presidency.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it definitely helped, but the show is so well written and put together. I think it would have still done well. I don't know. Maybe Baby Yoda put it to the top. I don't know.
So would you go for Tiger King or Mandalorian?
That's not fair. That's not fair. The Mandalorian.
I thought we were friends here. Ed, what are you doing?
Mandalorian for sure. What do you guys think of Boba Fett being in season 2 of The Mandalorian? I think that's going to be freaking awesome. I believe Captain Rex is supposed to be casted, or he is cast in the cast, and I think it's the same actor. Is that correct, Dan?
As far as I know, Tamir Morrison is cast, and that it's speculation. Everything else is speculation at this point. Might be Boba Fett, might be Captain Rex. That's my understanding of it. We don't really know who he's playing yet or what it is. It's possible that the caped character we saw in silhouette in episode 3 or 4, or whatever it was, might have been Boba Fett. Who knows? I'm fine if the guy just stayed dead. If he's actually in, this season, okay, if they do a good job with it, I'm fine. I didn't care for his appearances in Clone Wars, as a kid, trying to tell that story of, transitioning from, Jango Fett dying to becoming the adult Boba Fett. He's just one of those characters that I'm like, we don't really need all of these details about who he was or what he did. Just like the character is sold by the suit. So just make the suit do cool stuff. I don't know. That's if he's in season 2, he's not going to be wearing that outfit. So who cares? I don't know.
Sure. All right. One last Mandalorian question. Who would win in a gunfight, Carol Baskin or Din Djarin? Carol Baskin for sure. Carol Baskin all the way.
Allegedly.
Tiger King, so I can't answer.
All right.
I wouldn't know. I'll go for Carol.
My daughters, again, just the power of the internet. My daughters obviously haven't seen Tiger King because they're like 6 and 8, but just from watching just like random like videos on like Instagram or something, like they know all about Carol Baskin. They like sing songs about her. It's kind of I'm failing as a parent, basically, is what I'm getting at here.
All right. I had a couple more questions up here. Saw quite a few actually. Get there.
Come on, host, we're drowning here.
Oh. All right.
It's hard to read and host at the same time.
No filter, just put them up. Let's see what happens.
All right. So, do you think you will eventually age out of collecting? I've been in the game for 30 years and sometimes wonder if I'll tire of hunting, trading, selling. Ed, let's start with you.
Maybe not having the collection or keeping it growing. Maybe it can go both ways. Either I'll keep a small portion of the collection, or either I'll keep the actual hunting going and maybe not collect as much, because most of it is obviously for just going out to garage sales and flea markets and finding that cool thing you like. So I think that still overshadows having the collection, but I've come to appreciate the collection a lot more during the lockdown. So I mean,
oh yeah, for sure. Greco, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to envision me stopping at any point, because all I want to do is start again in terms of like hunting and getting out there. So like I don't see that happening anytime soon, just because it's like the thing I want most in the world right now is to just get out there and find these things. As far as but collecting, like everything goes in ebbs and flows. I mean, like I said, my wall is decorated in it. Started off as a comic book guy, that kind of died out. Then went after like original art, that kind of died out. And video games now is very just like pointed, like I only want this. That's all I really care about. And and a lot of it is kind of dictated by other factors going on in your life. Like obviously when I started a family, like I can't just ignore them, as much as I try to. It's just not something that I should be doing. So I had to dedicate more time to them because I don't want to miss out and be one of those people that like regrets, not kind of, seeing all the milestones along the life. Although, as I mentioned in previous talks, like one of the benefits of documenting a lot of these live finds is that I bring my family with me from time to time, and you can kind of just like revisit, like, oh, this is when I brought my daughter when she was 4 years old, and all she wanted to do was grab every single pony in sight. And I'm here trying to haggle over ponies. So it's definitely it's a great. This hobby definitely lends itself to being a nice like scrapbook of all facets of life. But I'm sure at some point, maybe one day I'll wake up and be like, maybe this just doesn't spark joy for me anymore, or, but to an extent, I don't think I'll completely like wipe out or stop going, but I might downsize, everybody. I think that's like just a natural, just how it all kind of plays out.
Yeah. Dan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's exactly that. I've my collection has gone from lots of stuff to fits in a bag to lots of stuff to even more to just depending on where you're at in terms of finances or space or family or other obligations. You prioritize what you need to stay invested in, what needs to stay on that shelf. I'm constantly pruning stuff and things that I thought I would never get rid of, things that I thought I would never get tired of. One day you kind of look at it and you go like, I think I'm done with that piece. I think it's time for that piece to go on. Whether that's motivated by a spike in value or just it's just something that, like you just said, doesn't spark joy the same way anymore. But I also don't necessarily want to be in a position where, my collection of stuff becomes a burden to somebody else, and it becomes somebody else's responsibility to do something with, So when you get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not out there all the time. It's not something that I'm as engaged in anymore. I hope I can, do what I need to do, make the decisions I need to make to get that collection redistributed out into the world. I am constantly wondering what happens with 500 Boba Fett action figure that are all. It's weird to like. I don't know if any of you have like an army built type of collection. Something that you have a lot of. Your favorite figure, you buy it all the time. Ed, I don't know if you have any multiples of that particular Raphael or Michelangelo or Raphael.
I keep all of them.
Yeah,
every single one.
The more of them I have in my collection, the more I feel like I personally have a responsibility to future vintage Star Wars collectors to make sure that nothing happens to them.
Do you also feel like you gain power whenever you add one? Like you're becoming more powerful?
Like Thanos.
Yeah, it can be only one. But going back to that Red Letter Media video where they melted all the figures, that stung because all of those pieces just went out of circulation, and not necessarily from a dollar value standpoint, but from this is something that can't be shared with future generations. That they're just gone. They're gone. Call that thing an art piece, whatever. I don't know. It's probably in a landfill. But I don't know what they do with it. But yeah, that's my busy stream. All those, all these Boba Fett action figures. It's neat. It's a great, marketing tool for us to be able to show, like, look at this collection, the pictures of it, the videos. We can, get content from it. It's a scrapbook for me of all these, adventures and places and people that we've met. But at the same time, if something were to happen to that collection, that's 500 of those figures that are gone. I feel a personal responsibility to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like it's also you allowing one part of your personality to really just go all out on, I gotta hoard all these, I gotta have all these?
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing. It is I never would have, I had my original, and then I found one in like the bottom of a box at a flea market, so then my original is from I got it in like 1980 or whatever. And then the second one I got in like 1995. And then, after that, it was like another 4 or 5 years. And then at a certain point, I'm sitting there with like 6 or 7 of them. And I'm like, I really like this figure, what if, we started to make this collection? And at the time I was never thinking like, oh yeah, sure. And in 6-7 years, we're going to have 500 of these, that of course you extrapolate out, you're going to end up there at some point, but to be in the position where I have that many of them now, it is a weird, surreal thing. And when you see them all together, it is just it's a different kind of collection. It's not like all these different Boba Fett's and all this Gundam stuff and G.I. Joe and whatever else. That's one thing. But when you just see that many of the same thing in one place, it's a weird, different thing. Perfectly healthy, I'm sure. But
yeah. Model of mental stability right there.
Right. It doesn't mean anything than what it is.
I'm not crazy or anything. I'm not crazy.
Anytime.
Daniel Boswell asks, how much do you think you've invested into your collections over the years? For myself, not that much, because I kind of I've recycled, I've sold, I flipped, right? But that's to get my collection to where I want it. So for me, it wasn't too much. It was kind of like a snowball effect. Greco?
No, yeah, that's why I was all excited to raise my hand, because I've always been an advocate of this, and I know that was like one of our first topics, when we talked about like scalping versus reselling and whatever, because it's a hot button issue. But yeah, I mean, I can honestly and proudly say that at this point, my collection, if it hasn't been completely paid for, it's close, or I might even gotten to the point where I've made more. And when I first got started, I was just excited to grab anything. Like, again, I was excited to grab this guy for $10, and I was buying things piecemeal that just like, oh, I remember this, I remember that. And then it got to the point where it's like, oh, well, how much do you want just for for the whole box? And then it's like, oh, I don't have to just it's not retail shopping. I don't have to buy just the things I need or want and hang on to them forever. Like, there's other collectors that want maybe what's left in the pile. So why not use that and be an outlet to them, to an alternative to buying maybe like high eBay prices or something, at least in the local market. I always try to reward, like when I set up at a toy show or something, like the local buyers, that community that's there. And it got to the point where it's like it just makes sense to have the hobby fund itself. And that's when we talk about burdens. I know we were talking about like leaving the collection behind after you pass away, but another burden is if you kind of go overboard and you're spending like grocery money on toys and things like that. So I never wanted to get to that point where it becomes like an obsession and you're really making poor decisions around your life. And thankfully that's a way to do it, and you can totally justify it as a healthy means to an end, I think. So I definitely advocate for it.
Yeah. Ed? Sorry, I jumped in.
How much do you think you've invested in your collection over years? Probably too much, but it's actually not too much because it's in the question. How much have you invested in it? It is an investment now. Like 15 years ago, or I'm probably overselling it. 13 years ago when I started doing this, I would have never guessed some of the games I picked up for like a couple euros would now be 200 or 400 euros worth each. Toys, the same thing. It's insane what this stuff is worth now. But in another way, it's also I'm investing money in this, yeah, for sure. But if I were to go to a fitness or go mountain biking or wall climbing, whatever, I'd be throwing money at that for doing it, enjoying myself. But you wouldn't have this room to come back to, would you? So, I mean, it's like, yeah, there's money going into that, and later on, as I started, having stuff, I would, flip stuff, have doubles. So, what do you do? How much for the table? You buy the lot, and you trade with your friends. You go set up at shows because you want to meet new people. I think I've invested a lot, but I've also gained a lot from investing in this hobby. Gained a lot of friends, a lot of like-minded people, not just here in Europe, but also through the channel from all over the world. So it's awesome. I mean, I love it. Yeah. There you go. Heartfelt.
Aw, love.
Mr. Dan.
Yeah, a lot. Just a lot.
A lot of money.
A lot. What am I out here? Come on. Yeah, no, I used to back in the Power of the Force 2 days, late 90s into the 2000s there. Just that whole era of the late 90s into the 2000s, like action figure collecting just exploded and things were totally different. Like through the 90s, you had Ninja Turtles and, the stuff like, Street Sharks, Cowboys and Moo Mesa, those sorts of lines. G.I. Joe is still there. And it's like, okay, it was Toy Biz, it was kind of manageable, but just once 2000 hits, everything blew up. And there was just so many more adult collector, sort of focused things. The prices started going up. Marvel Legends, McFarlane stuff, NECA, Mexico, everything. Like it was like a dream come true. And I was in a position where I didn't really have a lot of expendable income. In retrospect, I probably had no expendable income, but I still had to buy all the stuff, and I absolutely would, sacrifice. I would not eat food every once in a while. I'd be like, I don't need to eat lunch today. I'm going to get some, figures or whatever. It was just, it was tough to say no because not knowing where things were going, you're like, this is the golden age of toy collecting. I got to get it all. And then 20 years later, it's still going on. And I'm like, you never know when the golden age is going to end. I got to keep riding this high.
So when Power of the Force came out, were you like all on board and all hyped up to get them all?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. No, in fact, I went to school in Providence, Rhode Island, which is right down the street from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, which is where the Kenner offices are, and the Hasbro offices were. Kenner's in Chicago or whatever. The Hasbro offices were in Pawtucket. So I was able to, when Power of the Force 2 started, I would, my friends and we would get out of class in college, and we would drive over to the Hasbro store and buy the Power of the Force figures, like fresh from Hasbro, from their store as they were like putting them out before they were hitting all the other retail. And then that got so big because at the same time, they were also doing starting lineup. I don't know if you remember those figures.
Oh, yeah.
Sports figures, baseball and football players and stuff. Those figures and Star Wars were so big and so collector focused, and there were too many crazy collectors, not me, other people, too many crazy collectors who basically ruined it for everybody, and they had to like no longer allow public access to the Hasbro store.
Wow. How long was that a thing for?
That was at least for the first couple of years. Like,
wow.
All of the, first probably 4 or 5 waves of figures from Power of the Force 2, all the vehicles, I bought all that stuff, like straight from that Hasbro store before they closed it off, or before I graduated. I don't remember which one happened first.
That is awesome.
I will say though that, although my grand plan works in more of the vintage world, it doesn't necessarily apply 100% to like, new retail stuff. And then I've also been getting into like acrylic cases to try to like preserve some of these boxed items. Like right now I've been focusing on like the G1 Transformers that I have boxed and trying to get cases for them. And those aren't cheap. And there's not really like, you know what I mean? I can't buy 2 to sell 1. It's not, at some point you just have to bite the bullet and take the hit on that if that's something you're into. Although, again, when you kind of build up your pool of toy money, it makes it easier to kind of make those expenses. But in a retail setting for me, like I try to have the hobby pay for itself. Like, and again, not to garner hate and enemies, but like just recently, like the Ghostbusters, the retro ones that are coming out now, the Kenner classics.
Just
like
I
was
flexing. Yeah.
So I was lucky where I stumbled upon some in my local shop, and I was like, I'll buy a few extra. I'm not going to clear the shelves because I'm not a rotten person. I'll leave one behind, just so that out of the goodness of my heart. But in the end though, it doesn't really. I feel like at least where I am geographically, like we don't get the releases firsthand in a retail setting. It's always like the middle of the country, it seems. So you kind of miss that bubble when the prices are highest.
Yep.
And then you kind of have to make a decision like, do you just take what you can get at this point? Or I've had instances where I totally misjudged the market and I ended up just returning it, like with like the Iron Giants and the Robbie the Robots. Yeah, like I bought the ones for myself, And at the time, I was like, oh, these are selling for like $60 a pop. I can get some free figures, but that totally like vanished like immediately as soon as I got them. So held on to the receipt, just dropped it right back off at Walmart. But yeah, with these guys, like I sold a whole like complete set, and I think by the end of it, I might have made like $35. So it's not really worth it. I mean, yeah, I could say it's worth it in that I ended up getting like that equates to 2 free figures. But it's definitely not as lucrative as like at least the way I've been doing it in the vintage world. So I think I might stop. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it was back when Power of the Force 2 came out, the quantities of stuff were so much higher. When a new wave of figures would hit, there'd be like, they put out 10, 15 cases of figures. So each figure that was on the rack, like everybody that went up could buy 3 of each. Like they were just pegs full of figures. It was just a totally different market.
Was it like the Spawn comics back in the 90s where they would buy multiple of it just because of that old, not just leave one for the next collector, but you buy 3 because you want to open one, you keep one yourself, and when you're gonna sell down the line.
Yep. I was that guy.
Okay.
Yeah. You can't collect like that forever. At a certain point, you got to say, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I'm trying to sell it 30 years from now? If that's the case, you just can't invest that way with everything unless you have unless you hit Powerball or have some other source of revenue. That wasn't for me. I didn't want to. 2 extras of anything did me no good. Weren't as good as having 2 other figures. I'd rather have 2, 1 of 2 other figures than 2 of 1. If you know what I'm saying.
So we have another question from Sprooch Game Hunting. He asks, what's something you want and hope to find at a yard sale or flea market that you can easily get on eBay but keep holding out for? For me, right quick, Hot Spot from TMNT. I don't want to spend the $250 it's going for. Hot Spot Scratch, of course, would be nice. Those are my 2. Ed, what you got?
Everything. I bought one thing off of eBay, and like I don't enjoy buying stuff online unless like with the lockdown now. I did manage to score like a big 80s and 90s lot, so I did pick that up today, around 200 figures vintage wise, Transformers and stuff. So finally have a Transformers collection. But yeah, I just enjoy the garage sales or going to conventions and finding it there and having, like a story connected that to buying that figure or, just something. Obviously, when you pick up a big lot at a garage sale, it was part of that big lot, but you get what I'm going for. I could go up on eBay and, pick that up, maybe cheaper even, but I wouldn't have, the memories and all the feelings that come along with that. So, yeah. I do also trade a lot with friend collectors. And for me, that's different because, you already have a relationship with those other collectors and it's fun to just trade, even if it's big lots.
Yeah, definitely. Greco.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely echo Ed's sentiments as far as like it's about like the adventure and the journey, and that's why like I'm a patient collector in that I don't say like this is something I have to have and kind of like throw myself like at the mercy of whoever I find it from and whatever the circumstances are. Like that's why I think like that's why I have good success, and success not being that I always come away with something when I go hunting, but like success being that I get it for a good price and I have a good story to go along with it. And and I've definitely made videos before where I come away with like one thing and it's nothing to like write home about. So again, it definitely echo what Ed's talking about. Like it's more about the adventure and the thrill of the hunt that I enjoy, as opposed to necessarily like finding some old woman who has no idea what she has at a yard sale and gloating about it on Instagram later. But just to get to the throw some examples out there. I'm still wanting to really get some TMNT carded 10 backs. Like I really, that's something that the opportunities to get them locally are very few and far between, and it just hasn't worked out for one reason or another. And I've even tried like some of those Facebook like raffle groups, and even when I've had the best odds, like it just hasn't worked out. So I do not advocate toy gambling by any means at this point. Do as I say, not as I do. But I'm okay. I'm better now. And then another thing that I had regrets about that I would love to get, and it doesn't show up on eBay very often, is I had the chance to get a box. Yeah, I'm talking cardboard, but a box for a G1 Fortress Maximus that had the styrofoam inside. And I had a chance to get that locally for a really good price. And for whatever reason, dragged my feet, and it's just been haunting me ever since. And now every time I see an opportunity come up on eBay, it's like easily like 3 or 4 times what I would have paid for it locally. So I would love for that to fall into my lap as well. And then lastly, sorry, I'm running out of breath because I'm talking too much, but Thundercats, anything Thundercats, I really, that's a line that I really haven't seen pop up too often out there in a while. I mean, I'll see some loose figures every once in a while, but they're either incomplete or I'm not really seeing, like, I would love to find a Cat's lair, like any of the play sets. Boxes would be amazing.
Find a Cat's lair. Everybody.
Well, sorry you don't like my answer, Ed, but that's what I have for you.
What about you, Dan?
It's funny. There's a couple things that I've owned, or there's things that I haven't owned that I ended up owning at some point that I was like, okay, now that I've owned it, I can let it go. I used to buy and sell collections as well. I used to be a bit of a dealer. I had a couple shops that I sold out of here locally. So as a kid, I didn't have a shuttle Tidarium from Return of the Jedi, but I was able to own one as a dealer with in box, complete, excellent condition. So it's like I was able to take my photos, spend some time with it, have it for a while, and then say, okay, that's the kind of thing that it's so big, I don't need to keep that in my collection. Carded War Duke, vintage Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, that toy line. There's silly things like this over here. There's a Boba Fett figure here on this side. That it's not even a very good figure. It's this is the Hot Toys one. Oh no, it's on this side. It's from the 12-inch collector series. The proportions are weird. It's just a Hasbro figure from the early 2000s. But it's electronic, and it's before they went in and changed the voices to Tamir Morrison. So it still has the original actor's voice on the voice chip. So I had that at one point, downsized my collection, sold it, and then when they changed all the voices, that figure went way up in value, and I was like, I'm never gonna pay what it's worth now. And so years go by, and the price slowly came down, and I managed to get one last year, actually. I got this one in the box from someone who was selling a collection and was like, hey, I don't know if you're still buying collections and stuff. And I'm like, I don't really do that anymore, but I'd like to come take a look at what you have. So, I still went over and looked at it, and I was like, there's just so much stuff. I couldn't buy that, a scale of a collection. But he had that figure in the box, and I was like, I just need that one. If you'll sell me that one piece. So I didn't mind paying his price. But the other piece, and I've told this story before, is I have a Graflex 3-cell flash handle that is the piece. It's the old timey like press photographer newspaper.
Oh, okay.
It's the handle that goes on the big camera. There's a bulb here and a lens and whatever, but this is what they use for the lightsabers. In Star Wars, this is the Luke Skywalker, now Rey, lightsaber, whatever. But this was one of those things that I was like, someday I know I could hop on eBay and grab one. They were for like $600 or something. I'm like, I know I could just buy one. But someday I'm going to see one at a flea market. That's the kind of thing where somebody's going to have a box, somebody's going to have a bunch of old camera parts or whatever. They're not going to know exactly what this is worth as a cosplay piece, as a replica. They're only going to know the value as a vintage camera, piece. And sure enough, I went to a flea market a couple years ago, and the guy it was exactly as I had dreamt that it would go. The profile of the guy was right, the table was right, all the stuff was right, and I'm like, this is the dream I've had.
This is it.
There's a bin sitting on the floor, and it's right there, and I, grabbed it. We haggled. I got it for my price, and it's absolutely 100% the thing that I am like, my best find ever. It's not even an action figure. It is the thing that I dreamt about and wanted to be able to find could have bought on eBay, but managed to get it the way that I wanted to get it.
That's amazing. Heck yeah, dude. The Border Geek, thank you for that donation. It says, Dan, filming at a New Hampshire flea market for Greg to edit.
It's something that could happen. We've definitely talked about it. We don't do that much just because it's I'm never sure about, like, I don't know if you guys how you handle it if you have other people like Ed. I know I've seen a lot of your videos at different shows and stuff. You don't go around and have everybody sign like waivers to like be in the video or anything like that. It's like a public place, you can shoot, but I still feel a little weird about being that guy, who's like, I'm shooting a video and I'm taking selfies and whatever, and it's like, I don't know if I want to do that. So
I still feel weird doing that.
Yeah. We've done it at a couple of shows like RetroCon and things like that, where it feels more comfortable to shoot that in that kind of environment. In the woods of New Hampshire, I don't know, I might still feel weird about that.
It's still weird to do that, but as you said, like at conventions or at even retro gaming conventions over here, they actually when you buy a ticket, it says so on the ticket that you can be filmed and that footage can be used. So yeah, if you have an agreement with the Comic-Con that you're shooting at, or with just, if the guy who runs the gaming convention or the toy convention, they're like, yeah, sure, it's all fine. But yeah, for like the hunting videos at like flea markets and stuff, I don't really have people when I'm talking to them and I haven't discussed it with them. I'm going to pop this on YouTube. I will blur them out or do stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if it's just like, B-roll of people walking around, not really drawing any negative attention or positive attention, they're just there for the purpose of setting the scene. I don't think anybody, would notice them. So I don't go running around with waivers, obviously. Yeah. I don't think you guys do, right?
No.
Right?
No. It's a weird, like, I know it's a hang up that I have about that kind of stuff, where it's like, I will be at a flea market and I'm like, hunting and finding stuff, and I don't really want to shoot and I feel weird about it, but then I'll get home and I'll be like, boy, I hope those channels that I follow on YouTube have shot some stuff at flea markets, because that's what I want to watch.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely the biggest hurdle, and and even though I've been doing it for years now, like it's not something that I'm 100% comfortable with every time, because you have to. It's tough because as a content creator, you want to be able to bring the story to your audience, like live in the moment. Like, people who know me don't know, or they know that I don't embellish. So like, but when you don't have like the footage to back you up, sometimes people are like, "Oh, you're just saying this for views or attention." Like, I don't know who would do that. To me, it just sounds like the silliest thing to do, to say I bought this toy for whatever, just to get to get noticed. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what went into my decision to film things with a GoPro, because it's the most inconspicuous thing, and it's still like obvious. I mean, I have it like strapped to my chest. It's not like I have it like hidden behind like the buttons on my shirt or something. So it's just something where you kind of have to like. It's really, if you want to go through the trouble of like contacting like the organizers and seeing like, are they cool with it? But honestly, it's one of those things where more likely than not, you're just going to have to kind of ask for forgiveness, not permission, and see if anybody really cares. Luckily now, there's multiple YouTubers in my area, like Spruce Game Hunting. Like he's the type that went out there every week, so they see him doing it, and then when I show up, like, I guess people don't really ask questions that much anymore.
It's a far more like commonplace. Like, you can't walk through a mall without seeing somebody shooting something at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, in Spruce's case, they did actually pull him into like the office at a flea market in my area and be like, hey, people are just like noticing you have a camera. Like, what are you doing? Give me a copy of your license. We just want to make sure you're not doing something like really, really gross here. So, I mean, it does catch the eye of some people, and it's not something that it's just something you have to get over personally. But just in the case of like game chasers and stuff like that, sometimes people will shut you down. So it is a risk.
They get shut down quite a bit too.
Yeah.
Like in Europe, nobody does it. Like, even at conventions, it's still very weird to do, but like by now most people know me already, so they're like, oh, there he goes. and now I have like the big camera. So
Mhm.
I mean, it looks more legit, and some people are actually like digging that instead
Kinda
of
drawn
just
to it.
having, your phone.
cell phone.
Oh, I make YouTube show. You
Mhm.
be on my camera,
Big American YouTube show. Very much success.
Yes.
All right, guys, we have time for, I think, one or two more questions if y'all are up to it. We have one from Natty. What is the worst Christmas or birthday gift that your parents completely dropped the ball on from your childhood? And what was the gift they hit a home run with and made it the best Christmas or birthday ever? Ed, start us off.
Oh man,
That's a big one.
I guess the best one was like getting an N64, and at the same time, I don't know, like getting like a TMNT movie
Mm-hmm.
on VHS, which was always like a good thing. The worst birthday gift, I guess like the most odd one, I wouldn't say it was the worst, was getting like one of those, I don't know how you say it in English, like Marklin trains, like the what is it? What is it called?
Train
like
set?
Yeah, like a train set.
Yeah.
So it was like, and it was actually like something my dad used to have, and it was like we should buy him that. So it was like my dad trying to connect with me, and I was like, so where do the figures go, or what does this do?
Mhm.
No, it just drives around. And he had like a whole bunch of like vintage Marklin sets from like back in the 70s. So we had like a really big train set up. So I think at first that kind of like came over as, oh, they really didn't know what I wanted this time. But I ended up enjoying it. Yeah.
Awesome. Greco.
I would say worst clothes. just clothes. I hate
Yeah.
clothes. Even as an adult, I'm not putting a lot of effort into my appearance. So I've stayed consistent that way. So anytime like, and I'd be like a little cheat, I would feel the box and I'm like, oh, this is like paper thin, it's just like from like Filene's or something gross like that. So that, yeah, anytime it was definitely not appreciated when given to me. Best, I mean, honestly, I can't pinpoint a specific example because I mean, I was spoiled. I always got everything I wanted, so I don't want to come off like ungrateful by any means. But I do have a funny story about being ungrateful, just to show you how rotten I was. Ed mentioned N64. I don't think this is related to like a birthday or a Christmas per se, but my parents had the audacity of not buying me one on day one when it came out, and my response at the time was to like literally kick a hole in my wall, like cracked it. And I feel really bad about it now, and I wish there was some way I could make up for everything I put them through. But yeah, I was not a good person back then. Some would argue that I'm still not a good person, but
Always learning, always growing.
yes. So I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, even though I know you're not watching this, because we've separated at this point. No.
Dan, what about yourself?
Yeah, it's all those sort of practical gifts. Those were always disappointing. I obviously important, but oh, this is going to help you at school. I don't care. I wanted an airplane. I wanted a robot. My parents were very good about like you said, we grew up in pretty good circumstances as far as getting stuff like that. The one that really stands out for me was I was collecting masks. To the degree that you can actively collect something as a 12-year-old kid, you say, I would like this thing, and they either buy it for you or they don't. But for my birthday, I was not expecting. I hadn't asked for it, but my parents got me the Boulder Hill playset. And
Nice.
a complete surprise. Wasn't on my list. Didn't even want to go that big. My younger brother had just been born, so I knew that financially things were tighter, and I was like asking for small stuff that was more realistic that I could probably actually score. And for them to drop Boulder Hill, and knowing that my older brother didn't care, wasn't interested in toys, I knew that was exclusively for me. It wasn't like make sure you share with your brother, make sure. It's like, no, my older brother didn't care anymore, and my younger brother had just been born, so it was mine. I didn't have to worry about anything else.
Nice. For myself, the best would have to be the NES when that came out. I remember that day. I remember the gift wrap that was in. It was like that vinyl, very thin gift wrap that you could kind of like see through. So I knew it was an NES. That was the best. And then the worst was probably getting the Silver Surfer on the NES from my grandmother, which she didn't know, but that game was terrible. But growing up, or being older now, I appreciate it because like, oh, my grandmother gave me this, and it actually has a really good soundtrack to it. So those would be my two.
Were you actually disappointed in the moment? Like you were like, "Are you serious, Grandmama?"
No,
like,
I mean, no. When I got it, I was like, cool, but I played it. I was like, I can't even get past the first freaking level here. This is
Grandma,
terrible.
this is trash.
Yeah. Might as well given me Bayou Billy. I mean, it was trash. Yeah.
Bayou Billy ain't that bad.
I mean, it's like hard.
Silver Surfer, though.
Silver Surfer is terrible. Has a great soundtrack, though. All right, let's see if we have any more questions. Did you guys see anything? Anything that you wanted to comment on?
Take a ponder.
Lots of pogs.
Pogs, yeah.
Again. Yeah.
The podcast. Yeah.
Since I saw one way early, so I probably won't find it. But.
Yeah.
Just don't make it a Star Wars question, because then I can't speak.
I know.
Well, that's what people want.
I get excited about Star Wars, and I'm like, ah. But okay, well, I don't really see anything that's popping up, but I do want to thank Mr. Dan Larson from Toy Galaxy being on this week. We are honored, so thank you, sir. It was awesome. Next week we have. I guess I can go ahead and tell everybody, right?
Maybe pop down like the comments.
The question.
So I can actually see Dan again.
Yeah.
There
he is. He's hiding. Yeah. There's the puppets. But next week we have Mr. Pixel Dan, the other Toy Dan. He will be on. I think we're going to do that. It'll be 2:15 on Sunday at Central Time. So be back for that. Also tonight, if you want to check out Josh Pence, he has a stream. It's called The Sweet Spot. It'll be Cincy Nerd, Josh Pence, Toy Bills, Slapshot, and myself maybe for a little bit. So that's on his channel. Check that out. And guys, thank you for coming along. Thank you for all the comments, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, friends.
See you later. Bye.